Hi, my name is Wolfie Scratch. Out of all the battle items in Pokemon Unite, Eject Button seems to be the most popular one, and for good reason too. With it being an offensive and defensive tool, its value cannot be understated. With that said, people really haven't been using the Eject Button's full potential. Most people see the Eject Button as a way of escape or a way of chasing down another KO. In this video, I'm going to go over some advanced Eject Button tech that you can apply to your gameplay, whether you're from beginner class or master. As a starter, most people use Eject Button and then an ability in order to extend its range, but a lot of characters can use the Eject Button in many different ways that you might not know of. I've been hitting the lab for hours now, and in this video, I'm going to go over all the advanced tech that I could find using the Eject Button for almost every single Pokemon. I'll be going in alphabetical order, so if you want to see a certain character that you're interested in, then you can go ahead and just skip to it. But enough of me rambling, let's get right into this video. During Absol's feint, you can use Eject Button on top of a target in order to apply the damage. This can be used to quickly reposition your feint if you miss, or to catch your opponent off guard. This same concept is applied to Night Slash, where landing the first hit is key in order to get the second part. By using the Eject Button, you guarantee you land the first part of Night Slash. But the more practical use comes in the second part. By using the Eject Button during the animation of the second part of Night Slash, you can extend the range and also catch players off guard. You can do some really tricky stuff. When casting Absol's Psychic Cut, you can use Eject Button in a direction to quickly avoid an attack while the Psychic Cut still travels in the same direction. This can be used to avoid some certain attacks that are coming towards you, but this one has less practical use. You can use the Eject Button during Vulpix's Powder Snow in order to extend the range. This once again can be used to catch people off guard or secure yourself a KO. But the interesting one comes with Icy Wind. You see, there's a different property with Icy Wind. If you cast Icy Wind and immediately use the Eject Button, it'll actually turn the direction towards where you ejected to. So if I were to cast Icy Wind to the right, and Eject Button to the left, Icy Wind will come out to the left. The last application comes with the Unite move. If someone is out of range, or if you want to catch them by surprise, you can actually use the Eject Button while casting your Unite move. The trick here is to cast the Eject Button right when you slam downwards. Doing this will give the opponent almost no time to react to the damage. Fire Spin, Flame Burst, Flamethrower, and Fire Blast all have the same interaction. If you use the Eject Button while casting these abilities, the projectile will come out towards the direction where you ejected to. So if you aim your projectile to the right, but then Eject Button to the left, the projectile will now fire to the left. But also keep in mind, if you Eject Button in the same direction where you're casting it, it will just extend the range. Now, Fire Punch has an interesting property. If I use the Eject Button during Fire Punch's animation, the hitbox portion of it will actually go to where I Eject Button to. This can be used in order to secure yourself a guaranteed knockup. The Eject Button interaction with Charizard's Unite ability is actually very interesting. When you first cast your Unite ability, you can use your Eject Button for additional mobility. But the interesting part happens when you use the second part of the Unite ability, or the Seismic Slam. What happens is that if you pick up a target, you can actually use the Eject Button in order to move yourself away from a location. Now don't get too excited. When you Eject Button, you actually don't bring the target with you, it's just yourself. But in some scenarios, this can actually help maintain your safety. Both Low Sweep and Flame Charge have the same interaction. If you use the Eject Button while casting the ability, the damage of the dash will be done to the area where you Eject Button to. The use of this is questionable, as it's very difficult to land and is inconsistent, but it does apply a passive stack, so in a pinch it can come in use. Now things get really interesting when you get Blaze Kick. If you use Blaze Kick and Eject Button before you hit the target, it's quite pointless, as you'll just land back in the same direction. But if you use Blaze Kick right after you hit the target, that's where things get interesting. If you use the Eject Button right after you hit a target with a Blaze Kick, you can actually propel yourself in the direction of where you ejected to, instead of just going back. If you use the Eject Button forward, you'll gain a small distance, which can be used if you want to position aggressively. However, the best part about this is when you use it backwards. When you use the Eject Button backwards after you hit the Blaze Kick, you'll actually gain a lot more distance between you and the target. This gets even better if you're able to flash backwards over a wall. You'll gain a huge distance between you and your target. Lastly, with Cinderace's Pyro Ball, when you Eject Button while casting the ability, it will go towards the direction where you Eject Button towards. As I've said before, if you cast it to the right and Eject Button to the left while you're casting it, it will go to the left. Cramorant doesn't have many advanced techniques you can use with the Eject Button, but he does have a few. For example, with Surf, if you cast it and use the Eject Button, The surf will come out where you eject button 2, but it will maintain the same direction and where you originally cast it. What this means is if you casted your surf going up and an eject button to the left, you will now perform the surf right where you eject button 2, but it will still be going up. Also, an interesting thing is that the surf actually looks really strange when you use the eject button tech. It doesn't really affect anything, but it looks really janky. Now, Air Slash is really interesting. If you use Air Slash and then eject button while casting it, the Air Slash projectiles will go towards the direction in where you eject button towards. However, there is a catch. A unique interaction with Air Slash is that when you use it in a direction, you will be propelled in the opposite direction. This stays true when you use the eject button, but it works a little differently. If I Air Slash forward, no matter where I eject button towards, I will always go down. But a really cool thing is that if I Air Slash backwards, but eject button forward, the Air Slash projectiles will actually go towards the front, where I eject button towards, but also it will propel me forward as well. This can be really good to escape and as well as chase down people. But also remember, if I were to Air Slash forward, but then flash forward while doing it, the projectiles will still go forward, but you will get knocked back a bit. Dive and eject button have an interesting interaction where if you dive in a direction, and then as you're coming up, you can eject button toward location to get that knock-up area. The timing is pretty strict, and you don't get much reward, so this, in my opinion, is not worth it, but the Air Slash one is definitely worth noting. Lastly, while casting your Unite ability, anytime during it, you can actually eject button in a location. You can use this as a defensive option to get away from certain Pokemon, or you can use the eject button aggressively when they're just getting out of your Unite range. Both Fury Cutter and X-Scissor have the same interaction where if you press the eject button while it's casting, the direction of where the attack comes from will go towards the location where you eject button towards. The same goes with Stealth Rock. When casting it, and if you eject button, wherever you eject button towards, the Stealth Rock will cast from that location. The best usage of the eject button tech is for the Unite move. When casting Crustle's Unite move, at the last second, you can eject button to a location so you can get that stun off. This will catch people off guard and many times will guarantee a stun. So use this as a way to get a guaranteed stun on unsuspecting people. Eldegosses are very straightforward. When casting Leafage and using eject button, where you eject button to is where Leafage will come out in the same direction and where you originally did. It's as if you casted Leafage from that direction where you just eject button to. That's the easiest way to put it. For Cotton Spore, what you can do is right before a Cotton Spore is about to go off, you can eject button right towards them to get that stun off. Pretty straightforward. With Pollen Puff, you can actually put it on top of yourself, and right before it's about to detonate, you can actually eject button on top of the target, or you can eject button on top of your teammate for a quick burst of healing. Lastly, with your Unite move, when casting it, you're initially not allowed to use the eject button, but as you go up, you can freely use the eject button to get some added mobility to catch up to your teammates. But with your Unite move, right when you're about to slam down, you can eject button to a location, and that area will be the new slam down. You can catch people off guard by using this, so go ham with it. Both Bulldoze and Earthquake have the same interaction, where if you use the eject button while casting the ability, the location of where your slam is will go to where the eject button is. If you use the eject button while using Sand Attack, the Sand Attack will go towards where you eject button to, but the use for this is very questionable, and if I catch you doing this in my ranked game, I will not hesitate to report you. If you use Dragon Rush and then immediately use the eject button, you'll turn towards the location of where you eject button to, and then cast a Dragon Rush in that location. But if you use the eject button right before Dragon Rush is about to end, you can actually get the damage right on top of that person. Once again, with Dragon Claw, if you use the eject button while casting it, you'll use Dragon Claw in the location where you cast the eject button towards. But you're probably wondering what the interaction between using Dragon Rush and Dragon Claw at the same time. When doing so, you'll actually heavily extend the range of where Dragon Rush or Dragon Claw goes toward to, which can be really useful when catching opponents off guard. The range of it is deceptively large. If you use the eject button during the end of the Dragon Rush and Dragon Claw combo, you will do the finishing grab move at the end of where you eject button to, which can also catch opponents off guard. Lastly, and the most important one, is the eject button interaction with your Unite move. During any of the hits for your Unite move, you can eject button while it's coming out to a location, and the hitbox of the move will move towards that location. This is particularly useful for the slam portions of the move, where you'll get a guaranteed crowd control move, and as well as doing heavy amounts of damage. Confusion, Psychic, and Moonblast all have the same interaction when using the eject button during the cast. You will still fire it in the same direction where you originally aimed at, but the location where you fire it from will go to the location where you eject button to. When casting Psyshock, if your opponent is just out of range, you can actually use the eject button during it in order to catch up with them and have the projectile fall where you want it to. You can use the eject button to manipulate where the Psyshock projectile lands, as it always is a set distance from yourself. When you use Lick and then the eject button, it has a very interesting interaction. Near when the tongue is fully at the end, you can actually eject the button forward and extend the range. This looks really tricky. It can actually catch a lot of people off guard. Will-O-Wisp, Dream Eater, and Shadow Ball all share the same property, where if you use the ability and then cast the eject button, the projectile will change direction towards where you eject the button to. For Hex, when you use the ability and when you're just about to pop out, you can actually use the eject button on top of a target in order to get the damage off from there. This can make sure you can land a Hex on a target that is affected by a status, so you can get that cooldown reduction. The same thing can be said for the Unite move. Just when you're about to pop out, you can use the eject button and it will apply the damage to the area where you eject button to. When you use the eject button while casting Bubble, you will cast Bubble in the original direction you aimed at, but the projectile will shoot from where you eject button to. While using Surf, if you use the eject button during it, the damage of the Surf will be applied to where you eject button towards. This can be used to extend the range or quickly apply that burst of damage. This will be really useful in order to secure yourself a KO with the Surf to get that reset. Finally, with Smokescreen, if you use Smokescreen and immediately eject button, you'll actually gain a good amount of distance between you and the Smokescreen. This is important as you will actually maintain invisibility, but the timing of this is pretty strict. If you don't do it fast enough, you'll actually flash out of the Smokescreen before it goes down and you'll end up not getting any visibility. Both Quick Attack and Extreme Speed have the same interaction, where if you Quick Attack during the animation, you'll apply the damage in where you eject button to. This is more useful on Extreme Speed, as you'll be able to eject button on top of someone for that reset, and then be able to use Extreme Speed once again in order to escape or to chase down a target. Both Meteor Mash and Close Combat have the same interaction, where if you use the eject button while doing the ability, you'll cast that ability in the direction where you eject button to. If I use the ability to the right, and then eject button to the left, the ability will now go to the left. Finally, the most important interaction here is actually with Lucario's Power-Up Punch. Power-Up Punch does an insane amount of damage, and the range that you actually get while using Eject Button during Power-Up Punch is crazy. You can potentially hit an opponent from a whole screen away by using Power-Up Punch, and right during the end of it, you can use the Eject Button right on top of the target and you'll apply the knockup at its full damage. But keep in mind that if you hit a target with your Power-Up Punch and then use the eject button, no damage will be applied to anyone else. This interaction with Power Punch is by far Lucario's strongest suit. You can catch people off guard and do major damage, and as well as getting a free access to the backline. Being able to use Power Punch, extend the range with eject button, and make it so that the knockup portion is unreactable is crucial to Lucario's gameplay. During the animation of Cross Chop, you can use the eject button on top of a target in order to apply the damage or to further extend the range of Cross Chop. Now, Dynamic Punch is where things get interesting. With the ability, if you time it just right, you can actually get the damage and stun off in one location, and then immediately use the eject button to apply that same damage and stun to another location. So you can potentially get two areas of where the damage and stun will go off of. Now, this won't apply to the same target, but it can apply to two different targets. This takes a lot of practice and a lot of timing, but if you're able to consistently get this down, this can be really deadly. Now finally with the Unite move. While casting the Unite move at any portion, even the final punch, you can use the eject button to quickly readjust yourself in order to position to get more damage or drag people in for that final blow. This is really useful as a lot of people will use their eject button in order to escape the final hits of it, so being able to fully chase them down and get that damage off can be the difference in winning a fight or losing it. With Mr. Mime's Fake Out, if you time it just right, you can actually use the eject button right at the final part of Fake Out, and the damage and stun it will apply will actually go towards the location where you eject button to. This looks really tricky and can throw a lot of people off guard, but if you just want to use Fake Out and eject button forward while doing it, it'll just extend the range fully. If you use Confusion and then immediately use the eject button while it's casting, the direction of where Confusion will go to is where you eject button to. If you use Guard Swap and then use the eject button, Guard Swap will still go towards where you originally aimed at, but then it will cast from where you eject button to. This can be used to really extend the range of Guard Swap. Sorry Pikachu players, unfortunately, this little rat got the short end of the stick. The only advanced tech that I could really find was being able to use your Unite ability, and while it's casting, you can use the eject button to go towards a location. That's the only thing I could find, and I'm really sorry. With Scald, anytime the ability is going, you can actually eject button into a location to further extend the range. Remember, the direction in where you use Scald will be the same no matter where you eject button to. If you use Scald to the right and eject button to the left, the Scald will still aim to the right, but will be casting from where you eject button to. Now with Telekinesis, it still maintains that same property, but Telekinesis is way more important, as if you use Telekinesis and then the eject button, the range of Telekinesis gets significantly bigger. Lastly with Surf, if you use the eject button while Surf is coming out, you'll extend the range and as well as the waves. But this can also be used near the end of Surf in order to get yourself a good distance away to either chase down a target or run away. I also found a very interesting bounce thing here with Surf, where you actually bounce off the Ludicolo wall and get a good amount of distance. Really niche, but hey, if you ever find yourself in a situation to use it and actually apply it to a game to get something, go ahead and DM it to me on Twitter at WolfieScratch, and I'll give you an applause for that. Snorlax has a lot of tech with eject button. During tackle, you can actually use the eject button anytime during the ability to apply that knockup in that area. This can be used to catch opponents off guard and guarantee you get that knockup. This is way better than using eject button tackle, as the eject button can be reacted to, and also you're not guaranteed to hit it. If you use tackle and then the eject button, you're more likely to guarantee that you get that knockup. With Yawn, if you use the eject button while casting it, the Yawn's direction will go towards where you eject button to. If I use Yawn facing upwards and an eject button down, Yawn will now go downwards. With Snorlax's block, in order to guarantee yourself to get that stun, you can actually use block and then the eject button on top of the target. This is pretty straightforward, but it's such a powerful tool that I have to mention it. And now let's get to the big thing. Heavy Slam. Snorlax's Heavy Slam is really impactful. It does a good amount of damage and has a huge AoE knockup. But I see way too many Snorlax players using eject button and then Heavy Slam. That's way too slow and can also be reacted to. With Snorlax's Heavy Slam, when you cast the ability, right before you land, you can actually use the eject button in a direction to further extend the range and create a new knockup area. But there's even a more advanced tech. The properties of Heavy Slam are very different. Potentially with Snorlax, what you can do is that when you Heavy Slam to a location, right as you hit the ground and get the damage and knockup, you can actually eject button to another location, and the damage and knockup will be applied to that new area. You can potentially create 2 knockup and damage areas for the price of 1 ability. This knockup and damage can only apply to 1 target, so you're not going to be able to double the damage. But this can definitely throw people off guard, and you'll be able to get even more knockups and catch people off by surprise. Following that concept, when you use your Unite ability, right before you fall downwards, you can actually use the eject button to a location to get a knockup area. This can be really powerful, as it's really hard to predict and really fast. During Acrobatics, if you use the eject button, the area effect damage that Acrobatics does will be now applied to where you eject button to. This can be useful for a quick burst of damage, but it's pretty niche. While casting Flame Charge, if you use the eject button, you'll apply that Flame Charge damage to wherever you eject button to. But the most important interactions with eject button come with Talonflame's Brave Bird and Fly. When you do the damage with Brave Bird and Fly, you can use the eject button to another location where that same damage will be applied to that new area. This can be used to extend the range and as well as catch people off guard. But remember, this will not affect the same target, so you're not going to be able to double your damage on top of the same person. This can catch a lot of people off guard, and is probably one of the reasons why I actually take eject button on Talonflame now. Now, one of the cooler interactions comes with Talonflame's Unite ability. During the Unite ability, at the very start, you can use the eject button in order to move to a location so you can go over a wall. But one of the cooler interactions is that during the Unite move, while you're flying down, you can actually use the eject button in order to move yourself to a different location while continuing to charge in the same direction you originally planned. This can be used to get over walls or scoop up other players in order to apply that damage. This can really throw people off, and honestly is a really fast burst option that people do not expect. With Razor Leaf, while casting the ability, you can actually eject button towards a location in order to keep using the Razor Leafs while applying it in the direction. This can be used to chase down players who are getting out of your Razor Leaf's range and can throw a lot of people off guard. The other interaction you can do is use Giga Drain. You can actually cast Giga Drain and then flash in a direction in order to apply the damage in the area where you eject button to. So you can actually Giga Drain backwards, but then eject button forward in order for Giga Drain to go towards forward and instantly apply that damage, and as well as absorbing a little HP for yourself. With both Defense Curl and Rollout, during the animation of it, you can actually eject button to apply the knockup. For Defense Curl, this can easily guarantee a knockup quickly, as Defense Curl does not have much range unless you're bouncing off, But with both abilities, you can actually eject button into a wall in order to bounce off of it. This is way more useful for rollout as you're able to get significant distance or apply the damage. You can even take this further by taking rollout, hitting your opponent with it, bouncing off the wall, hitting your opponent again, and then use eject button to once again hit him with another hit of rollout. One of the biggest problems with Slash is that if a target is able to get out of range of Zeraora, they won't get the knockup. If you know your target is able to get away, you can actually eject button to follow up on them, and the knockup will still apply to where you eject button to. This can be really useful if you want to make sure you can get that knockup and hopefully guarantee that KO. With Volt Switch, in both instances where you originally cast the ability or go back to the original zone, you're able to eject button during the animation in order to apply that damage to that area. Lastly, with Wild Charge, you're able to extend the range while casting Wild Charge, and right before it ends, you can use the eject button to get on top of a target in order to get yourself that damage. This took a really long time to make. I had to lab all these interactions by myself and find out what's going to be useful to say and what's not useful to say. Because there's plenty of interactions with the eject button that are really obvious or just way too niche for me to include. So if you don't see something, it's probably because I didn't think it was important, or I might have forgotten. I haven't slept in a long time because I've been working so hard on this. But if this video was helpful, please consider subscribing, please consider sharing. I spent super long making this, and hopefully you'll enjoy all of the, all this tech that I've discovered. And I really hope that you apply it in your games. And that's all really what I have to say. Sorry my voice sounded dead. I recorded this in the middle of the night because I suddenly got a hyperfixation on it. And I'm sorry this video is so long. That's just how long it takes to get all the tech out. But I genuinely hope that you guys enjoy this video. And I genuinely hope that at least you learned one thing. That's just my goal. Just learn one thing. That's all I want to do. I just want more people to learn about this game and get better at it. That's all I could ever ask for. Anyways, this was Wolfscarch, peacing out. Thank you so much for watching the video. Goodbye.